Have you ever had a single moment of kindness change your life? In today's story, we meet Alex, a young man who thought he was just offering a seat to an elderly woman on a crowded bus, until that small act led him to a mysterious address, a hidden mansion, and an unexpected friendship that would transform his entire future. What started as a simple gesture of compassion became a journey that would impact countless lives. Join us as we uncover the incredible story of how one good deed can create a legacy beyond imagination. It was the end of a long day, and Alex Johnson felt every bit of exhaustion in his bones. At 23, he was no stranger to hard work, juggling 2 jobs at the bustling production factory. His days started before dawn as a machine operator, carefully watching over the heavy, humming equipment, and ended with hours as a cleaner, sweeping floors and scrubbing machinery. Each day left him weary, but this particular one had felt especially draining. As he approached the bus stop, Alex could feel the day's weight settling in. His hands were rough from work, his back ached from bending and lifting, and his mind was reeling from a tense encounter with his supervisor. For months now, he'd been handling extra tasks that seemed to pile on by the week, but each time he brought it up, his supervisor would only shake his head dismissively. It had been no different today, except that today's response was harsher. A series of scolding words still ringing in Alex's head. He shook it off, focusing on getting home and unwinding, hoping the bus wasn't too full. As the bus finally rolled up, Alex was relieved to see a few seats open. He quickly made his way in, finding a spot by the window, and slumped down, letting out a deep sigh. For a few moments he closed his eyes, savoring the chance to rest. Around him, other passengers were engaged in their routines, eyes glued to their phones, chatting with each other, or simply looking out the window, lost in their thoughts. Alex barely noticed any of them. He was too busy letting his mind wander, wondering how much longer he could handle such an exhausting schedule. As the bus pulled up to the next stop, the doors slid open and an elderly woman stepped aboard. Alex opened his eyes, noticing her right away. She looked tired, her steps slow and careful as she made her way into the crowded bus, scanning for an empty seat. There were none left. Passengers continued looking at their phones or out the windows, each in their own world, paying little attention to her. Without thinking, Alex stood up and waved her over. "Ma'am, you can have my seat," he said, his voice soft but clear. The woman looked up at him in surprise, clearly taken aback by his kindness. A faint smile crept across her face as she made her way to the seat he'd offered, carefully lowering herself onto it. "Oh, thank you, young man," she said gratefully. "People don't do that much these days." Alex returned her smile with a polite nod. "It's no trouble at all. You look like you could use a rest." As the bus continued its route, Alex stood by the railing, gripping it tightly as the bus jostled down the road. He caught snippets of conversations around him and felt the glances of a few other passengers who'd noticed his gesture. Despite his fatigue, he found himself feeling oddly uplifted. Maybe, in some small way, he had made someone's day a bit easier. Even on his most exhausting day, Alex believed that kindness always mattered, even if no one else seemed to notice. When the bus finally approached Alex's stop, he reached out to press the button signaling the driver. Just as he prepared to leave, he felt a gentle tug at his jacket. Turning, he saw the elderly woman extending her frail hand towards him. "Young man," she said, her voice just above a whisper, "you've been so kind to me today. Here." She slipped a small folded note into his jacket pocket. Surprised, Alex started to ask her about it, but the bus doors opened and he was nudged forward by the flow of passengers eager to get off. As he stepped out onto the street, he turned to look back at the bus. The woman gave him a small wave and a knowing smile before the doors shut, and the bus pulled away. For a moment, Alex stood there, a bit bewildered by what had just happened. His hand instinctively reached into his pocket and he pulled out the note she'd tucked there. Scribbled on it was an address and a 5-digit code, written hastily in shaky handwriting. What could this be? He murmured to himself, squinting at the unfamiliar address. It was in a neighborhood he barely recognized. Maybe it was a thank you gesture, or perhaps an address for a local community event. But as much as he tried to make sense of it, the note remained a mystery. Tucking it back into his pocket, Alex headed home, deciding he'd think about it later. Tonight he needed sleep more than anything, but as he walked, his thoughts kept drifting back to the elderly woman on the bus and her mysterious note. He wondered who she was and why she had felt the need to give him this peculiar message. Even as he lay in bed that night, exhausted but restless, he found himself unable to sleep, the note nagging at him like an unsolved puzzle. Alex spent the next 2 days trying to shake off thoughts about the note the elderly woman had given him on the bus. Each time he reached into his jacket pocket and brushed against the crinkled piece of paper, he felt a surge of curiosity and, strangely, a little hesitation. What if it was some kind of setup? Or maybe just a simple mistake? After all, she might have meant it for someone else. But no matter how much he tried to ignore it, the note with its unfamiliar address and 5-digit code kept calling to him. By Thursday evening, the curiosity became too much. With his day off approaching on Friday, he decided he would finally investigate the address. His mind raced with possibilities. Maybe it was an address for a small, tucked-away shop or perhaps a local community hall. A part of him wondered if it might be some kind of special thank you from the elderly woman. Whatever it was, it seemed worth a look. Friday morning, he rose early, feeling a tinge of excitement and nerves he hadn't felt in a long time. After finishing his usual routine, he slipped on a comfortable jacket and grabbed the note from his pocket. He studied it one more time, committing the address to memory before heading out the door. He boarded the same bus where he had met the woman, quietly hoping he might see her again to clarify the mystery, but she was nowhere to be found. After nearly half an hour of stops and starts, the bus finally arrived at the neighborhood indicated on the note. Alex stepped off, finding himself in a quiet, leafy area, quite different from the hustle and bustle he was used to. Large old trees lined the sidewalks, their branches stretching out to create a canopy over the street. The houses here were spacious and set back from the road, surrounded by thick, lush gardens. Following the directions on the note, he came to a high wrought-iron gate at the entrance of a grand estate. It was unlike anything he'd ever seen up close. The property stretched far back, obscured by tall trees and flowering bushes, giving the whole place a sense of mystery. The address matched, but he still wondered if he was at the right place. Feeling a bit out of place, he reached out to knock on the gate, only to notice a keypad embedded on the side panel. He glanced down at the 5-digit code scrawled on the note. Could it really be the gate code? Hesitating only a moment, he punched in the numbers, half expecting nothing to happen. But with a soft beep, the gate clicked and slowly began to swing open. Alex's heart raced as he stepped inside, feeling as if he'd just crossed into another world. The wide path led him past manicured lawns and a few statues dotted along the way, until he finally approached the main house. It was a large, elegant mansion, its stone walls ivy-covered and its windows glinting faintly in the morning sun. The front door was slightly ajar, and as he approached, he heard a faint, familiar voice from inside. His breath caught as he recognized it. Stepping into the foyer, he saw her, the elderly woman from the bus, sitting comfortably on a velvet sofa in the spacious living room, a gentle smile on her face. "Well, I'm glad you decided to come, young man," she said warmly, gesturing for him to join her. "I had a feeling you would." Alex approached her slowly, still trying to make sense of everything. "I didn't expect, well, any of this," he admitted, glancing around at the grandeur of her home. "I hope I'm not intruding." "Not at all," she replied, her voice soft yet reassuring. "I wanted you to come. It's rare to meet a young person who's willing to offer a stranger their seat on a crowded bus, you know. That's a kindness people don't always take notice of, but I did." Her words filled Alex with a warm sense of validation. He sat down across from her, unsure of what to say, but the woman seemed to know exactly how to put him at ease. "My name is Eleanor," she said, extending a hand that he took carefully. Her handshake was gentle but firm, a hint of strength despite her frail appearance. "And I'm in need of some help around this place." Alex's curiosity deepened. "Help?" he asked, his brow furrowing. "What kind of help?" Eleanor smiled, her gaze steady. Yes. I'm looking for someone to help me with everyday tasks. Cooking, tidying up, running a few errands when I can't get out. I used to have people to help, but it's been hard to find someone trustworthy. When you helped me that day, I could tell you were a good soul, someone who cares. Alex was taken aback. A part of him wanted to leap at the opportunity. After all, it was rare for him to feel this level of trust from someone. Yet, he still hesitated, uncertain about accepting a role with so many unknowns. Eleanor seemed to sense his doubt. "Don't worry, dear," she said, her voice soft and understanding. "I'm not asking you to decide right away. But I thought, maybe you'd like a change. The work here isn't difficult, and the pay is good. Just think about it." She handed him a small envelope, which he accepted with a nod, feeling an odd sense of gratitude and respect toward her. "Thank you," he murmured, still taking in the surreal turn of events. As he stood to leave, she gave him a reassuring smile. "Come back any time if you decide, and even if you don't, know that your kindness meant the world to me." As he walked back down the path, the gate closing behind him, Alex felt the weight of the envelope in his hand. He'd expected answers, and while he'd received some, the visit had left him with more questions than before. The following morning, Alex found himself on the same bus, his mind drifting back to his encounter with Eleanor. The memory of the mansion's grand facade, the vast gardens, and Eleanor's invitation felt almost like a dream. She had offered him a chance for something new, something that could ease the stress of his current jobs and bring some stability to his life. Yet, there was a mystery about Eleanor and her offer that tugged at him, leaving him both curious and cautious. He clutched the small envelope she had given him. Inside, he'd found a neatly written note with details about the role she had in mind, the pay, which was significantly more than he'd ever earned, and a line that simply read, "Trust is a rare gem." Eleanor had also written that he was welcome to return any time, even if just to chat. By the time he arrived at work, he had resolved to go back and give her answer, but he'd still hesitated to open up completely to the idea. The next day, with a bit more certainty, Alex gathered a few essentials and returned to the mansion, deciding that even if he didn't take the job, he wanted to understand what it was that kept drawing him back to Eleanor's quiet yet powerful presence. When Alex arrived, he found the estate just as quiet as before, with the sunlight streaming through the large trees, casting patterns of shadow and light across the driveway. He hesitated at the gate, feeling as though he were on the brink of a secret world. He punched in the same code from the note, feeling the soft beep and click as the gate slowly opened, inviting him in. Eleanor was waiting for him on the front steps, her face lighting up with a warm smile as she saw him approach. She wore a simple but elegant dress, her silver hair neatly pinned back. She looked both wise and humble, as though she carried secrets within her that she was willing to share, but only if someone was patient enough to listen. "Welcome back, Alex," she greeted him, motioning for him to sit with her on a nearby bench in the garden. "I'm glad you decided to return." Alex settled beside her, and after a moment's pause, he looked her in the eyes, trying to read her expression. "Thank you for inviting me back," he replied. I've been thinking about your offer, and it feels like a big step. But I'm curious, why did you pick me? There are surely others more qualified." Eleanor's eyes softened, and she leaned forward slightly, folding her hands together. "Sometimes, Alex, it's not about qualifications, it's about character," she said. "I saw that in you right away. A young man who would offer his seat to a stranger at the end of a long day is the type of person who has the kind of heart I want around." She smiled gently, watching him as if he were family. Her words touched Alex deeply, easing the last of his doubts. "If you'll have me, then I'd like to help." Eleanor nodded approvingly, her eyes gleaming. "Of course," she said. "There's much to do, but I promise it won't be too difficult." Eleanor then showed him through the house, revealing rooms he hadn't seen before, each one unique and filled with memories of a life well lived. Portraits hung along the walls, and as they walked, Eleanor shared stories about the people in them, friends, mentors, and her late husband, who had once shared the mansion with her. They passed a vast library, a sunlit dining room, and a cozy study where she often sat by the fire with a book. Their final stop was the kitchen, a warm, inviting space filled with the scent of spices and herbs. Eleanor pulled out a recipe book and handed it to him with a smile. "Breakfast is the most important meal for me," she explained. "I'd love it if you could help prepare it each morning." He agreed, feeling a sense of purpose and an odd connection to this mansion that seemed to welcome him as much as Eleanor did. As the days turned into weeks, Alex quickly grew accustomed to the mansion's rhythms and routines. He helped Eleanor with her daily needs, preparing meals, tidying rooms, and ensuring her medications were always within reach. Though the tasks were simple, the job felt meaningful, far removed from the draining work at his old jobs. In the evenings, after the day's work was done, they would sit in the drawing room, where Eleanor would share stories from her past. She talked of her travels, her youthful adventures, and the people who had come and gone in her life. She told him about the mansion itself, built by her great-grandparents, and how it had stood through decades, watching the world change around it. Alex listened, captivated by the history embedded in every room, every piece of furniture, and every whispered memory. One evening, as they sat by the fire, Alex finally asked the question that had been lingering in his mind. "Why do you live here alone, Eleanor? This mansion, it feels like it should be filled with family." Eleanor sighed softly, looking into the fire as though searching for memories long gone. "I had a family once, Alex, but time, it has a way of taking the ones we love. I've had friends and caretakers over the years, but it's never quite the same. This house is full of memories, but I'm one of the last people who remembers them." A silence settled between them, and Alex felt a deep empathy for her solitude. It struck him then that perhaps he was more than just a caretaker to her. In a way, he was a witness to the life she had lived and the legacy she was preparing to pass on. When he finally retired to his room that night, he lay awake for a long time, thinking about Eleanor and the mansion. This job had become more than he'd expected. He felt a deep sense of belonging and even responsibility, not only to the estate but to Eleanor herself. As he drifted to sleep, Alex knew that accepting Eleanor's offer had been one of the best decisions he'd made. One crisp morning, after Alex had made breakfast and ensured Eleanor had her tea just the way she liked it, she motioned for him to join her at the dining table. Her usually warm smile was replaced by a more thoughtful expression, and Alex felt a slight unease, wondering what might be on her mind. "Alex," she began, her voice softer than usual, "I've been thinking a lot about the past few weeks, about how much peace you've brought into this house." She paused, taking a sip of tea, her gaze distant as if trying to gather the right words. Alex felt a warmth rise in his chest, both touched and curious. "Thank you, Eleanor," he replied sincerely. "I'm grateful to be here, and, to be honest, this place has felt like a second home already." A faint smile played on her lips, and she set her teacup down, clasping her hands gently together. "I didn't bring you here just for company, you know. There's something I'd like to discuss, something I've been considering for some time." Her gaze met his, her eyes steady and intent. Alex nodded, feeling a mix of anticipation and curiosity. He couldn't quite predict where this conversation was heading, but Eleanor's serious tone hinted at something significant. "You see, Alex, I'm not as strong as I once was," she said, her voice gentle but firm. "Living in this grand old house alone has become more challenging than I care to admit. Most days the upkeep is too much for me, and truthfully the solitude can feel a bit overwhelming." She leaned forward slightly, looking directly at him. "So I'd like to make you a proposal. I want you to stay here permanently, as my caretaker. You'd be more than just help around the house. You'd be my trusted companion, someone who can bring life back into this home." She paused, allowing her words to settle. For a moment, Alex was speechless. He'd come here on a whim, out of curiosity, and now he was being offered a position he'd never considered, a life-changing opportunity to live and work in this magnificent mansion. His first reaction was gratitude, but questions lingered on his mind. "Eleanor, I'm honored," he replied, his voice filled with sincerity. "But are you sure I'm the right person for this? I don't have much experience beyond basic household chores and I'm not sure I'm qualified to handle such a responsibility. She smiled, a warm and understanding expression that seemed to calm his doubts. Alex, what I need isn't someone with a list of qualifications. What I need is someone with a kind heart, someone I can trust. And I know, without a doubt, that you are that person. Her words silenced his doubts, but he still felt a sense of responsibility weighing on him. It's a big commitment, he admitted, looking down, still processing her offer. I want to make sure I can be here for you fully if I accept. Eleanor reached out, placing a gentle hand on his. I wouldn't have offered this if I didn't think you could handle it. And of course, the position comes with a generous salary, more than what you've been making at your other jobs. Alex felt a surge of relief. The thought of not having to juggle exhausting shifts for minimal pay was tempting, and Eleanor's offer was more than he had ever expected. This job was not just about money, though. It felt purposeful, almost as if life had placed him here for a reason. Then, he said after a moment's reflection, his voice steady, I accept. Eleanor's face lit up and she squeezed his hand gently, a look of quiet satisfaction on her face. Thank you, Alex, she said softly. I know I can trust you with my home, and I believe you'll find this role fulfilling as well. As Alex left the table that morning, a sense of peace and purpose filled him. He had not only found a place to work, but a place where he felt valued and at home. Over the next few weeks, Alex settled into his role as Eleanor's caretaker, gradually adapting to the rhythms and routines of life at the mansion. Each day began with quiet mornings in the spacious kitchen, where he would make Eleanor's breakfast exactly the way she liked, warm oatmeal with a drizzle of honey and a cup of herbal tea. Though he'd started the job somewhat nervous, he found himself quickly growing accustomed to the peaceful routines. Eleanor's gentle guidance and the calmness of the house helped ease any lingering uncertainties. Aside from meal preparation, Alex was responsible for managing the daily tasks around the mansion. He maintained the garden that sprawled across the backyard, trimming bushes, watering flowers, and even reviving the small vegetable patch. Eleanor had once been an avid gardener herself, and she would often join him in the late mornings, taking a seat in the shade as they chatted about the plants she'd tended to over the years. Her voice would grow animated, and Alex noticed how the garden seemed to rekindle a youthful energy in her. These quiet moments, filled with laughter and Eleanor's gardening stories, became his favorite part of the day. Inside the mansion, Alex took care of household chores, tidying rooms, dusting the delicate furniture, and ensuring that everything was always in order. The grand library quickly became his favorite room to clean. Lined with shelves of dusty, leather-bound books and bathed in soft afternoon light, the library felt like a window into Eleanor's past. Each book he picked up seemed to hold a story, not just on its pages, but also in the wear and care of its cover. Sometimes he'd come across a personal note scrawled in the margins or an old photograph tucked between pages, a reminder of the rich life Eleanor had lived before he'd arrived. The days slipped by in a fulfilling cycle of work and companionship. Eleanor's health continued to fluctuate, with some days easier than others. On days when she felt weaker, Alex would sit by her side, reading aloud from her favorite novels, filling the room with the comforting sound of familiar tales. On one such day, as he read to her from a well-loved copy of Pride and Prejudice, Eleanor interrupted him with a small chuckle. "You know, Alex," she said, her voice soft but playful, "Mr. Darcy may have his charm, but I think you might be the best gentleman I've met." Alex couldn't help but smile, feeling a deep sense of connection and warmth. Eleanor's gentle humor reminded him of his own grandmother who had passed years earlier, and he realized that, in a way, Eleanor was beginning to feel like family to him. As days turned into weeks, Alex also became acquainted with Eleanor's neighbors, some of whom would drop by to check on her or bring small gifts. They seemed to regard him with warmth and approval, grateful that someone was there to care for her in a way that went beyond simple duty. Alex's genuine dedication and gentle care for Eleanor didn't go unnoticed, and he felt a newfound sense of belonging, not just in the mansion, but in the neighborhood itself. Every night before closing up the house, Alex would sit with Eleanor in the cozy den, They'd share simple dinners and talk about their days, or sometimes just sit in companionable silence. He was no longer a stranger in her life. He was a companion, someone she could trust. In those quiet, fulfilling weeks, Alex realized how much this role had changed him. His once strenuous life felt lighter now, filled with purpose and gratitude. He hadn't just taken on a job. He had become part of a home and found a new sense of direction. As he closed up each night, he felt content knowing he'd found something rare, a chance to make a difference, however small, and to share his kindness with someone who genuinely valued it. One quiet evening, Alex had just finished preparing Eleanor's dinner, her favorite chicken soup with fresh herbs from the garden. They shared a comfortable meal in the den, chatting quietly about Eleanor's memories of old friends and the travels she'd taken in her younger years. Alex noticed that Eleanor seemed more tired than usual, so he helped her to bed a little earlier that night, tucking her in under the thick quilt that she loved. "Thank you, Alex," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know what I'd do without you here." "Good night, Eleanor. I'll be just down the hall if you need anything," Alex replied softly, giving her hand a reassuring squeeze. Feeling content, Alex retreated to the guest bedroom down the hall, planning to read a book before bed. But as he was about to lie down, a strange sound drifted through the quiet house, a faint scraping as if someone were trying to force open a door or window. He froze, listening carefully, his senses on high alert. There it was again. This time it was unmistakable. Someone was trying to break in. Heart pounding, Alex quickly got up, moving silently to the door of his room. He peeked down the hallway and listened. The sound seemed to be coming from the kitchen door that led out to the garden. He knew that the house, while secluded, was located in a neighborhood that had seen a few recent burglaries. A cold chill ran down his spine as he realized that Eleanor, vulnerable and asleep, was just down the hall. Whoever was trying to break in had no idea there was anyone here other than the frail, elderly woman. Alex made his way quietly to the kitchen. There, through the small window, he caught sight of a shadowy figure attempting to pick the lock. Without thinking, Alex grabbed a large metal flashlight from the counter, his mind racing with options. He could try to scare the intruder off, but there was no guarantee it would work. If he didn't act fast, they might get in, endangering both him and Eleanor. Steeling himself, Alex took a deep breath, turned on the flashlight, and pointed it directly through the window, illuminating the figure outside. The intruder, momentarily blinded, recoiled in surprise. Alex then shouted, his voice firm and commanding, "Hey! Get away from here! Now! I've called the police!" The figure froze for a brief second, clearly startled by the sudden voice. Then, without a word, they turned and sprinted off into the darkness, vanishing among the trees surrounding the mansion. Alex stayed rooted in place, his heart pounding until he was sure the intruder was gone. He leaned against the kitchen counter, trying to steady his breathing. A moment later, he heard a soft voice from the hallway. Eleanor had woken up, her frail figure framed by the dim hallway light. "Alex, what's going on?" she asked, her voice filled with concern. Alex moved toward her, keeping his own voice calm and reassuring. "It's all right, Eleanor, just a little scare. Someone tried to break in, but they're gone now. You're safe." She gave a slight shiver, clutching the shawl around her shoulders. Alex guided her back to her room, reassuring her every step of the way. He sat with her until she calmed down, recounting stories of his own courage and tough times to help ease her mind. After Eleanor had finally drifted back to sleep, Alex checked the locks on every door and window, making sure the house was secure. He placed his makeshift flashlight weapon nearby, close enough to reach quickly if needed. He stayed awake through the night, vigilant, determined to protect Eleanor and the home they now shared. When morning came, Alex felt the weariness settle in, but he knew he'd done right by Eleanor. As she awoke, he promised her that he'd look into extra security measures to ensure nothing like this would happen again. For both of them, it was a reminder of how quickly peace could be threatened, and how in that moment of danger they had each other's backs. Eleanor's gentle smile and grateful words were all the thanks he needed. For Alex, this home was no longer just a job. It was a place he was willing to protect, no matter the cost. The days that followed the break-in were calm but filled with a new sense of urgency. Alex could see that Eleanor was weaker, and she seemed to grow tired more easily with each passing day. Their conversations became slower, but Eleanor's stories and laughter filled the house like a gentle melody, making each moment feel precious. Alex noticed that she often lingered over her words, as if savoring them, as if she knew she had a limited time left to share. One chilly morning, Alex came into Eleanor's room with her usual breakfast, soft scrambled eggs, toast, and her favorite tea. Eleanor was already awake, gazing out the window at the garden she loved so much, where the last autumn leaves were clinging to the trees. "Good morning, Eleanor," Alex said, placing the tray on her bedside table. She turned to him, her eyes bright despite the tired lines on her face. "Morning, Alex, you've been so good to me," she said, her voice soft, carrying an unusual seriousness that made Alex pause. Eleanor reached for his hand, her grip weak but steady. "I don't have much family left," she began, "and most of my friends have long since passed on. But these last few months with you, Alex, have meant the world to me. I didn't think I'd get the chance to feel cared for again." Alex sat by her bedside, his heart heavy but full of gratitude. "It's been my honor, Eleanor. I feel like you've been like family to me, too." A small smile played on Eleanor's lips. "Family is what we make it," she said. "You know, I never had children. There was a time I was married, but that's a story for another day. I always wanted a connection like this, someone who'd be there not because they had to, but because they wanted to." Eleanor took a deep breath, her gaze drifting to the window as if she were watching her life play out in the garden beyond. "I think it's my time, Alex," she said finally, her voice a fragile whisper. "I've made my peace, but there are some things I want you to know before I go." Alex nodded, feeling a lump form in his throat. He didn't want to believe she was leaving, but he also didn't want to take this moment from her. "First, I want you to know that everything I own, this house, my accounts, it's all going to you. You've shown kindness, respect, and loyalty when I needed it most. I couldn't think of anyone more deserving," she said, her voice filled with a gentle strength that surprised him. "Eleanor." Alex's voice wavered. He didn't know what to say. The enormity of her gift and her trust in him left him overwhelmed. Eleanor squeezed his hand gently. "I see the potential in you, Alex. You're capable of so much. This is my way of saying thank you, and of giving you a chance at a life you deserve." For the rest of the morning, they talked about Eleanor's wishes, her memories, and her hopes for Alex. She asked him to look after her beloved garden and to open the house to people who might need a warm place to stay. She wanted her legacy to be one of kindness, the same kindness she'd found in Alex. That evening, as Eleanor lay back in her bed, Alex held her hand, reading softly from one of her favorite books. She fell asleep peacefully, a faint smile on her face, her breath slowing with each page. Just before dawn, Eleanor quietly slipped away, her hand still in his, her spirit leaving as gently as she had lived. Alex felt an ache, but also a deep gratitude for the time they'd shared. The house felt heavy with silence, yet full of Eleanor's presence. He stayed beside her for a while, his heart both broken and full, holding on to the memory of her kindness, her wisdom, and her trust. In the days that followed, Alex fulfilled Eleanor's final wishes. He cared for the house and opened its doors to others in need, just as Eleanor had envisioned. And as he stood in the garden, feeling the sun on his face, he realized she had given him more than just a home. She had given him a purpose, a family, and a legacy of kindness that he would carry forward. The days after Eleanor's passing were somber for Alex. The house, once filled with her warmth and stories, now felt vast and hollow. Alex spent hours tending to the garden she loved, feeling her presence in the flowers and trees that she had so carefully nurtured over the years. He tried to honor her memory by keeping everything just as she would have wanted, but nothing could replace the quiet companionship they'd shared. One morning, Alex was deep in thought, rearranging a few flowers by the front path, when he noticed a car pulling up to the gate. 3 men in sharp suits stepped out and approached the house. At first, Alex felt a pang of apprehension. What could they want with him? One of the men, a tall gentleman with graying hair and a soft but serious expression, introduced himself as Mr. Grant, Eleanor's attorney. "Alex," he said kindly, "we're here to discuss Eleanor's estate and some instructions she left for you. Could we come inside for a few minutes?" Alex led them into the living room, the space feeling different with these visitors, yet somehow as dignified as Eleanor herself had been. They all settled in, and Mr. Grant opened a large leather-bound folder. "Eleanor left detailed instructions for us regarding her estate," he began. "She made it clear that everything, her home, her savings, and her investments, would go to you." Alex's eyes widened, unable to believe what he was hearing. "Mr. Grant, I don't understand," he stammered. "I was just her caretaker. Why would she leave everything to me?" Mr. Grant smiled gently. "Eleanor saw you as much more than a caretaker, Alex. She trusted you, respected you, and saw something special in you. She often told me how grateful she was to have you in her life, especially in those last years when she needed a true friend. She called you her guardian angel." Overwhelmed, Alex looked down at the table, struggling to process this. He had always felt that caring for Eleanor was a privilege, a way to give back to someone who had treated him with kindness and respect. He never once thought of any reward. Mr. Grant continued, "Eleanor's estate is substantial, Alex. She left you the house, her accounts, and even some shares in various businesses. She wanted you to live a life of stability and purpose, something she felt you had sacrificed in your years of hard work." Alex was speechless. He never imagined his life would change so drastically, and certainly not in this way. This doesn't feel real," he murmured, his voice full of emotion. "I don't know if I can ever repay what she's done for me." Mr. Grant nodded, understanding. "Eleanor asked for only one thing in return," he said. "She wanted you to continue caring for the house and keep her garden alive. She also hoped you might use this home to help others just as you helped her." Those words brought clarity to Alex. Eleanor had given him a legacy, but she had also given him a purpose. "I'll honor her wishes," Alex said softly. "This house will be a place of kindness and refuge, just as she wanted." Mr. Grant handed Alex a set of keys along with a final note from Eleanor. Alex unfolded it carefully, reading her familiar handwriting. "Dear Alex," it began, "if you're reading this, you now know how much faith I have in you. Take this gift and make it your own. Share this home, share your heart, and let kindness be your guide. Remember, family is what we create, and you, Alex, were my family." Tears welled up in his eyes as he read her words, feeling her presence in every line. He folded the letter and held it close, a sense of gratitude settling over him. Eleanor had seen in him a potential he hadn't even recognized in himself, and she had left him the means to make something meaningful of his life. As the lawyers left, Alex took one last look around the house, realizing that he now had a path forward. He would continue her legacy, using the home as a place of refuge, perhaps even opening it to those who needed a safe place to stay, just as Eleanor had opened her heart to him. In the months that followed Eleanor's passing, Alex poured his heart into making her home a place of peace, reflection, and refuge, just as she had envisioned. The house, once an isolated mansion with silent rooms and empty halls, became a gathering place filled with laughter, warmth, and new beginnings for those who needed it most. The transformation began with a simple idea. One evening, while reading Eleanor's letter for perhaps the 100th time, Alex was struck by her last words. "Let kindness be your guide." He realized that kindness could take many forms, including opening this space to others, as Eleanor had opened it to him. So, Alex decided to start small, inviting a few friends and neighbors over for weekend gatherings where they could share stories, enjoy home-cooked meals, and experience the sense of community he had come to cherish. Before long, word spread in the neighborhood. Friends brought along friends, and soon Alex found himself hosting an ever-growing circle of people seeking comfort, advice, or simply a place to belong. It became a sanctuary for single parents, local youth looking for guidance, and elders who had no family nearby. The home was alive, filled with energy and purpose, and Alex could feel Eleanor's spirit in every corner, as if she was watching with pride. One evening, as Alex cleared the dinner table, a young woman named Sarah approached him with a soft smile. She had been attending the gatherings for several months, often helping in the kitchen or tending to the garden. "Alex," she began, "you've created something really special here. You may not realize it, but this place is helping so many people. It's like a second chance for all of us." Her words caught Alex by surprise, and he paused, the weight of her sentiment sinking in. "Thank you, Sarah," he replied, humbled. "I'm just trying to honor Eleanor's memory and do some good. I never imagined it would grow into this." Sarah nodded thoughtfully. "I think Eleanor knew exactly what she was doing. She saw potential in you, Alex. She knew you would take her kindness and pass it on." Inspired by Sarah's words, Alex decided to take things further. He converted one of the mansion's spacious rooms into a community library, filling it with books from Eleanor's personal collection alongside donated volumes from the neighborhood. With the help of volunteers, he also set up a garden club for local children, teaching them to care for plants and respect nature, just as Eleanor had once taught him. The garden was blossoming more vibrantly than ever, a testament to the love and effort that now went into every flower and tree. As the seasons changed, Alex saw the impact of Eleanor's legacy extend in ways he had never anticipated. People started reaching out from nearby towns, having heard of the home's reputation as a place of healing and renewal. Some offered donations to help with upkeep, while others shared stories of how they too had been touched by kindness. Alex realized that Eleanor's vision was not only alive but growing far beyond the mansion's walls, reaching into the community and inspiring others to create ripples of compassion. One evening, while going through Eleanor's things, Alex came across an old scrapbook she'd kept hidden in a drawer. As he flipped through its pages, he discovered photographs of Eleanor in her youth, attending rallies, organizing community events, and hosting gatherings similar to the ones he now held in her home. She had been a quiet, yet powerful force for good in her own time, long before he'd met her. It was as if Eleanor had passed down to him not just her belongings, but her values, her legacy of community, and her unwavering belief in the goodness of people. Reflecting on this, Alex felt a renewed sense of purpose. He wasn't just honoring Eleanor's memory. He was carrying on her life's work, a responsibility he embraced fully. He made plans to expand the gatherings, inviting local organizations to use the space for workshops on topics like financial literacy, health and wellness, and family support. The mansion became a hub for meaningful connections, a place where people could come to learn, grow, and find support. One rainy night, as Alex sat by the window watching the raindrops patter against the glass, he felt a deep sense of fulfillment. He knew Eleanor's house had found its purpose, and so had he. It was no longer a place of solitude, but a home filled with love and resilience. Eleanor had entrusted him with more than just material wealth. She had gifted him with a life-altering opportunity to make a difference. The people who walked through those doors left with more than they came with, and Alex saw the lasting impact of Eleanor's kindness reflected in each of them. Her spirit lived on, not only in the walls of the mansion, but in the hearts of everyone who had been touched by the home's warmth. Alex felt closer to her than ever, not through memory alone, but through action, through each moment of compassion he shared with others. Thank you for joining us on Alex's journey, a story that shows just how powerful kindness can be. If you enjoyed this tale of compassion and the lasting impact one person can have on others, please subscribe to our channel. We have so many more inspiring stories to share, and we'd love for you to be part of this journey with us. Remember, every act of kindness, no matter how small, has the power to create lasting change. See you in the next story.